Welcome. It's Monday, as you will all know, my favorite day of the week because I get to host this Journeys Webcast. I'm Allan Karl, World Rider, your host, and I want to thank you for tuning in today, or if you're watching this on the replay on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. As usual, got an incredible guest today who's got amazing stories and experiences, and really related to the thing that we all are probably yearning for more than anything else, and that is to get back on an airplane and travel the world. But before I bring Johnny in, I just wanted to check in and say, hey, happy holidays! Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is that you are celebrating. This is we're winding down. And by the way, today is the 21st day of December. So not only is it, the first day of winter, it is our winter solstice. It's the shortest day of the year. And I look forward to the days getting longer again. I don't like it getting dark so soon. And I also look forward to winding down the days of 2020. I think we all want to see a brighter light at the end of the tunnel for 2021. And somebody sent me a little, one of these little meme jokes the other day. It says, okay, it's 2020. He says, just wait until 2021 when the year is 21 and starts drinking. Okay. So let's hope that there is a new attitude, new perspective, and new things. Things are looking positive, and I'll get more into that. So thanks again. And if you are watching on the YouTube channel playback, for sure, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down there and check out. This is the 29th episode of the Journeys Webcast, and I started this back in April, and as looking for a way to kind of vicariously travel around the world with guests all over, and we've had guests from 13 different countries, so it's really cool. But let me tell you about Johnny Jet. Johnny Jet has traveled. I mean, check this out. This is the first year that he hasn't, but he has traveled over 100,000 miles a year since starting his newsletter in 1995. He's visited more than 70 countries. He and his website, johnnyjet.com, have been featured thousands of times in major publications and websites, including Time, USA Today, New York Times, and Forbes. He's hosted a television special on the Travel Channel and has appeared on every major television network. The usual: ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, and Fox. And he's been, Forbes named Johnny Jet the original travel influencer. This guy, Johnny, has been doing it before anybody's been doing it. He writes about, you got to check out his newsletter if you're not subscribed to that. He writes about travel tips and tricks, including travel deals, how to score cheap flights, how to get the maximum credit card points, and how to use anything to do with travel. Lately, these days, every Saturday, he shares his travel and technology wisdom on the Tech Guy podcast, the one with Leo Laporte. He regularly contributes to several publications, Forbes and Bravo TV, and johnnyjet.com is considered one of the top best money-saving websites for travel by Budget Travel Magazine, and the LA Times calls it one of the top 10 essential travel resources on the internet. I'd like to have Johnny Jet come on and join the live stream. Come on in, Johnny.
Hey.
There he is. Hey, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
How do you do this with headphones? I don't know if we can do. Well, it could kind of go like that for a little bit.
Let's see how long it goes until it.
Let's see until it falls off, right? But this is the holiday show and the solstice show. Hey, where you dialing in from?
I'm in Los Angeles, California. I usually do not have a beard, but my son is 4 years old, and he loves it when I kiss him. And he says it tickles, and so he wouldn't let me shave it. And when it started growing in gray, he's like, "You can look like Santa," and I'm like, "You know what? I'll do it till Christmas. And if my wife keeps baking the way she's baking, I will definitely look like Santa."
The cookies, the bread, the cakes,
everything, the pies.
Oh, so your wife likes to find her way around the kitchen, huh?
Yeah, especially now that we've been quarantined for the last 9 months or so.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed. I cook for myself every night, and I just have a cat too. It's my COVID crew, I call them. But I used to say I don't want to cook just for me, but now I found myself really enjoying that. So
listen, before my wife moved out to California, I met her on a press trip. She's a journalist, and we were married for, I think, almost 4 years before we even lived together.
Oh, wow.
We'd commute between LA and Toronto, and I never cooked ever. I mean, literally, I was living in a small apartment that had a stove. I don't even know if it worked. I don't think I ever turned it on. I would always get takeout or fast food or whatever. And then we bought a house together, and now, well, she does most of the cooking, but I do some.
You do some. Okay.
A little bit.
Yeah. What would you say is there a signature Johnny Jet dish that you put together? Something that you seem to keep going back to?
Yeah. Cereal. No, I'm kidding. I make this thing, fire chicken, I call it, but it's chopped up chicken with all kinds of peppers and onions and salsa, and it's so hot and so good. And you get these really good tortillas. You don't buy the cheap tortillas. You got to buy the good ones that are usually found in the refrigerated section that you have to bake or heat up, and they're amazing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, for sure. I have gone into those tortillas in the refrigerated section for sure. And you're right. They're just fresh.
And the cilantro makes all the difference.
Cilantro is absolutely the key to all flavors, everything good. I do this dish inspired. I make it. It's like a salad dish. It's from I first had it. I mean, it's a Mediterranean or Middle Eastern dish. It's a salad, but I first had it in Syria in a greasy gas station. I tell this story sometimes on my keynotes, but anyway, it's got lots of herbs. So it has parsley, mint, and then lots of cilantro, and with just cucumbers, tomatoes, and a little bit of onion and some feta cheese. Of course, it's Middle East, and it's my go-to. You're
lucky you got to Syria. I mean, that's one country I haven't been to. I mean, I haven't been to a lot of countries, but that's definitely one of them that I've come close to. I've been to Cyprus and Israel, but I haven't been to Syria.
I was lucky. I was there just about a year before the proverbial shit hit the fan. And, I think sometimes with travel, and you could share this too, that you lower your expectations are the fact that you get surprised just increases that level of appreciation much better. And Syria has that for me because I had the most incredible, it is the crossroads of history. It's where the Silk Road meets, it's the crossroads. Damascus is perhaps the oldest city, inhabited, the one that's still inhabited, and it was fantastic. But where are you going to go? First of all, let's get down to brass tacks. When's the last time you were on an airplane?
February 26th, around 9 p.m.
Right down to the hour. Is that in the morning or the evening?
No, in the evening. I was flying back from Florida.
Okay.
So I would go see my dad. My dad's 92. I would go see him every 3 weeks to check in on him. Actually, at one point, I went 4 times within 3 weeks just to, when he was having a rough time. But, and I have not gone to see him. First of all, he's been in lockdown in a senior home, so I couldn't even do it. But, it's just the best thing. It's hard. I mean, they say if you love someone, you will stay away from them, which, your brain it's difficult to comprehend. And so one of the first places I will definitely go is go see my dad.
Go see. Yeah. My mom is in Florida as well, Marco Island on the the Gulf Coast. And I last saw her last November around Thanksgiving in the East Coast with my brother out there and outside Washington, D.C. And, thank God for FaceTime and Zoom. But
it honestly is a lifesaver, because if there wasn't FaceTime, I honestly, I don't think my dad would have made it. He's like, this thing is the most amazing thing in the world. He feels like he's in our house. Sometimes I just put the phone down and the kids, we'll grab it and just take them around and play with them. And I'll sit and do my work.
Yeah. And I know you lost your mom many years ago, and you have a very nice tribute on your website for her. And one of the things you said, we bringing in family, it's holiday time. And you're talking about your 4-year-old son, is that you took her to Europe at some point. You hopped on a plane with her in tow. And it's something I did with my mother to Argentina in 2017. I took her the entire thing from the jungle all the way to the glaciers. And,
nice.
And, you know,
on your motorcycle?
No. Yeah, I would have liked to. She said I'd have to get a sidecar though, but yeah. So that's real warm. And so your dad, and yeah, thank God for the FaceTime and things.
I mean, growing up, I grew up in Connecticut, and I found out that not too far from each other.
Yeah, and, actually, we traveled the same, the Boston Post Road. You grew up maybe 5 miles from where I did, or so.
Probably less.
Yeah, probably.
Which is amazing.
Which is amazing. This is so we probably did cross each other somewhere on those roads on the we like to say exactly. The Long Island Sound, on the
for sure.
Yep.
But growing up, we never traveled much. I mean, literally, most of our trips were car trips because I have 3 siblings, and a family of 6 is expensive. But we would go to Florida once in a great while. I'm talking, I think I flew maybe a handful of times before I was in high school. But my mom never went to Europe, and her brother asked her because her father was born in Denmark, and that was always her dream trip. And she was the most unselfish woman in the world, and she would not do it. She didn't want to leave her kids. And so when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, I was like, you know what, we got to go. And I'd never been to Europe. Actually, I went once the year before that. And I was like, I feel comfortable. It always seemed so far away, and I was full of fear. But after my first trip to Europe, I realized, it's no big deal. Anyone can do it. And I cashed in a bunch of my miles, which when I was really just getting into the mileage game. And we flew first class. She never flew first class. And I got to tell you, man, it was to this day one of the best trips of my life. And we did it again the following year.
Oh, you did.
And we traveled around. We went to all the places that she dreamt of going. She got a scholarship in Paris to Parsons. She was a fashion designer, but she passed it. She passed the opportunity because she met my father, and she said she designed a family instead of dresses. And so I took her to Paris, London. We went to Denmark, Sweden, Germany, and it was just unbelievable. So my advice, one of my best travel tips is, cash in your miles and points and take your loved one somewhere and do it in style. And that's the best advice I can give you. Do
it in style. Hey, awesome. Great advice. Hey, for those of you who are in the live room with us right now, there's a chat sidebar over there. I can see that Aaron from Mission Viejo is tuned in. Chris from Leucadia, one of my neighbors. Great to see you, Chris. So if you've got questions, you want to shout out, let us know where you're dialing in from, and say hello for sure, because this is about you guys tuning in and doing that. And I love that Johnny's got his Santa hat, because when I first got onto the green room with him, I didn't have my Santa hat. It was still tucked away, in the other room, and I thought, what a great idea. Although it wasn't lasting on my headphones.
Well, this is not going to last too much longer either, because it's hot.
It's hot. Yeah.
It's warm today in LA. It was 75 degrees.
Oh, it's just, and you look at some of these pictures of the snow on the East Coast, and this is why I think
I am jealous a little bit of that, by the way. For a white Christmas is amazing, but only for like a day or two, and then I'm ready to get the heck out.
Yeah. Did you see this thing? Remember when we grew up that we had snow days, right? When it snowed so much they couldn't get the streets cleared. And it was we always looked forward to a snow day because you didn't have to go to school.
Of course. Best day of the year.
So I think there was a town in Virginia somewhere that just decided, because nobody's going to school, right? They're all at home, is they called a snow day anyway. And they turned off all the online classes. They turned everything off, and they actually made a snow day with a little nostalgia and a little love for that.
I love that, because I did read that most schools these days, if there's snow, they just go to online. And I was like, man, that would just ruin me, because most of the time there were big tests and I never studied for them. And then I was just like, please, God, please don't let there be school today. And I just listened to the radio. Back then, today you could just turn on the internet or your email.
Or you get a notification.
Radio station.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, I want to step back in time, right, with you, since we're getting nostalgic here. And JohnnyJet.com, your whole brand, your it kind of came about a bit accidentally. And I know there are two things. You eventually attended school out here. You can share with us that. And after going through a series, getting a couple degrees, something got you hitting the travel bug. So I want you to tell me about that. Tell us about that. And also how maybe a little bit of a competition among friends turned into a whole new business for you.
Yeah. Well, again, like I said before, I grew up in Connecticut. We rarely traveled. I was always fascinated with planes. I still am today. It blows my mind. And back then it would blow my mind that you go from freezing cold Connecticut to hot and sunny Florida in two and a half hours. And today it's like, I get on a plane. I'm like, I can't believe how many people can get on this thing. And it just flies through the air. I mean, if my great grandparents or even my grandparents knew that I've gone to Hawaii for dinner, they would faint. They wouldn't believe me. So when I got over my fear of flying and actually leaving the house, there was a point where I was afraid to leave the house.
Oh, really?
Which is a long story, but I had anxiety.
Okay.
I talked to my sisters were living in Australia at the time. It's actually a pretty funny story. One of my sisters met an Aussie at Club Med in the Caribbean. So she went to Australia with him. She ended up staying. My mom sent my other sister to Australia to go bring her home. She met an Aussie and stayed. And then this is when Crocodile Dundee came out. And I was like, I just really want to go to Australia. We've never gone really international. And I would leave little notes on my mom's bed every night. It took me about 6 weeks, I think, to talk her into going on this trip for my senior year of spring break. And we had this dream trip: New York, San Francisco, Hawaii, Sydney, Perth, back to Sydney, Fiji, LA, and home. And we had it all set. We went to the airport. Actually, right before we went to the airport, the day before, my mom brought me to the doctor for a checkup because I was just diagnosed with asthma. And my asthma doctor's like, "You're going to Australia? That's like a 27-hour something flight. You might have a difficult time breathing on the plane." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Difficult time breathing?" She's like, "Well, planes are pressurized." I'm like, "No, I didn't know that." And so anyway, I get to the airport. I have a full-on anxiety attack. And I go, "Mom, I can't get on the plane." And she laughed. And my dad was there because back then you could go right to the gate, dropping us off. And he thought I was joking too. And when they realized I was not joking, I started crying. My mom started crying. Then my dad started crying because he thought he had the house to himself for 2 weeks. And it was just ugly. But my parents were amazing. Next couple weeks, my mom's like, "You want to at least try to go to Hawaii?" And I'm like, "Nope." And
how old were you?
I was 17.
17. Wow. Okay.
But I got over my fear. For 3 years, I was literally afraid to leave the house at times. And my mom brought me to all kinds of shrinks, but the shrinks did not do anything. And it turned out it was a homeopathic doctor that discovered that I was on too much asthma medication and it was giving me anxiety.
Oh, wow.
And so he weaned me off a little bit of it, not a lot, but he weaned me off the hardcore medicine. And I came out to California, which is another long story, but I came out here, I fell in love, and I ended up going to school. And while I was going to college here, I dated a girl one of my classmates whose parents lived all around the world. Her father was a big banker living in Singapore. The first year she invited me to Singapore. And I was like, I gave her some lame excuse why I couldn't go. But the real reason was I was afraid. I didn't know if I'd be able to breathe there. I didn't know how to do it on the plane. The next year she invited me to Hong Kong. And I was like, you know what? I got to do it. But she only flew first class or business class. And I never knew what it was like on the other side of that curtain. So when it came down to it, I was like, I'm not going to sit in the back while she's up front. So I had to figure out ways to get a cheap business class ticket, which I did. I went through a consolidator. I learned all kinds of tips and tricks from this one trip. And it cost me like $300 more, or my dad, because I begged my dad to buy the ticket. And then when I get to Hong Kong, I was like, man, if you want to have your first out of coach experience, you want to do it on a trans-Pacific flight, because what a difference it makes. I didn't even want to get off the plane. And the flight ended up being like 16 and a half hours because we were delayed. And I just fell in love with Hong Kong, fell in love with travel. I went to Macau on my own while we were there. I was there for almost a month. And I got back. I had so many freaking flyer miles from that one trip that I had enough for a free domestic ticket. And I was like, this is a racket. So I really started learning how to accrue miles. And I graduated college, and my first job was actually working in a college, that I went to. I was student body president actually at.
Oh, wow.
And I was hired as a recruiter because I was the best, because the school changed my life. I went from like a 0 to student body president. Mm-hmm. And I really blossomed. And usually when you're working as a college recruiter, you're just traveling around to local high schools, but almost everyone in the office quit. So I had all the seniority, and I was going to 26 states, including Hawaii 3 times a year. They hired most of my friends in the office, and we ended up having competitions on who could accrue more miles. And I was killing these guys because it was my passion. And I would read a lot of things, ask questions to everybody, business travelers, flight attendants, pilots. And they're like, can you share some of your secrets? And email was brand new. This is 1995. So I started sharing an email to my friends in the office. And then all of a sudden they started forwarding it to their friends. And then their friends started forwarding it. And I was sending out these mass emails. I didn't even know about BCC, blind carbon copy. I would just send it to everybody. So they'd have this huge list of emails. And people are like, you need to create a website, and you need to create a name. And my nickname growing up was Johnny Jet Ski, because we grew up in Long Island Sound, and I was a big jet skier. And I was like, hey, I'm not Polish, so I'll just drop the ski and we'll call it Johnny Jet. And I could buy back then I could have bought like Nike.com, which I should have, but JohnnyJet.com was available, and I'm happy for that. And I bought it, and the rest was history. It just took off. Within 3 weeks, USA Today wrote about it. And once they wrote about it, literally almost every major newspaper started writing about it. They were looking for content, because back then there wasn't a lot of stuff on the internet. And most websites wanted to keep people on their site. They didn't want people to get off of their site. And that was never my intention was never to make money. My intention was to get people to see the world and get over their fear. So I would link to everybody, say, listen, this is how you save money. This is how you can travel, feel safe. I do it for everyone, from gays, families, singles, whatever. And it just really took off. And my friends would call me up, say, turn on the TV right now, your website of the day on CNBC's Power Lunch. And I'm like, you're joking. And they weren't. I turned it on. I was like, I'd almost faint. And people started calling me to do radio interviews, TV interviews. And then the Travel Channel asked me to host a special.
So, wow. Somebody's actually trying to FaceTime me. This is pretty funny.
I was wondering. I was like, I hear FaceTime, but
yeah. Okay, so I've got to go and do this, and that's hilarious. It's actually my producer, director. Speaking of the Travel Channel, well, I filmed a pilot, as you may know, and speaking of Canada, I guess your wife is Canadian.
Yes, she is.
He's in Vancouver. So anyway, that's just funny. He knows I do these webcasts. But this is amazing. You wake up one day and your site is being spread across the CNBC. Your server, where was your server? It probably got taken down.
I had multiple. Totally.
Yeah. This is incredible. So JohnnyJet.com now is it ultimately became your career. And how did that transition happen? And
so they asked me to speak at different colleges. Actually, when I was working at the college, I'd go to these annual college fairs or college conventions, and they're really boring. Most of them talking about financial aid, but this one guy was talking about how to travel, Chris Krizak. And I was like, man, this guy's hilarious. He knows a lot, but I knew more than him. And so afterwards I'd go up to him. I said, listen, I would love to do it with you. And he was like, I would love to have you. And so we had this great hour-long session for the next 4 years at these national college conferences. And we had standing room only. I mean, people they couldn't get enough of it, because people wanted to learn how to travel first class on a budget, because everyone who was working at a college was on a tight budget. And once you go up front, it's difficult to go in the back. And so we we were sharing our secrets, and it really went well. And that's when I started really blasting out my newsletter, when I came up with the name, and that's when it took off.
And you're kind of a go-to guy. I mean, that was the start of people would go to you, as you said, doing speaking and also for news shows. People were looking for content, and it evolved beyond that travel. I'm going to play a quick video here of Johnny Jet and why you're the go-to guy, and we'll talk about it on the other end. I'm going to mute my mic, and hopefully I'll remember to
I'll do the same.
Anyone who knows me will tell you I'm pretty frugal. My friends and family, however, will say it's beyond frugal. I'm cheap. Now, look, I just want to get my money's worth, so I'm always checking to find out the best credit card offers that are out there. And now I'm trying to pass on some of my knowledge to you. Start with your interest. If you like to travel, the sign-up bonus is the most important thing to look for in any card. Most airline cards usually offer bonuses of 50,000, sometimes 100,000 miles.
50,000 miles will get you at least 2 round-trip tickets from here to the East Coast, if you can do it off-peak.
John Discala is better known as Johnny Jet. He travels the world and writes about it on his website, figuring out ways to save people money and make flying more pleasant.
Sometimes the different credit card companies are offering these really incredible deals that will actually give you about almost $720 just in travel, if you can pay it off in full every month.
And that's where it gets tricky. Look for credit cards that are not tied to any specific airline.
The Chase Sapphire Preferred, where you can transfer your miles and points to dozens of different airlines or hotels or car rentals, so you have a lot more flexibility.
why is my camera not on? Can you hear me, Johnny?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just don't see you, but
I know. Well, you know, that's a
you're good finding that clip.
Yeah, you know, I was looking around. Where can we show Johnny Jet? Because you know, I'm sure there's a lot of others, but yeah. So and it's funny, you know, that you talk about the Sapphire Reserve, which is a credit card I used to use almost exclusively, and got when they were giving away 100,000 points, you know, on sign up. It's a more expensive card, but they give you the rebate and they
for sure,
you know, all that other stuff. So you know, you started with travel tips and that, but that kind of did evolve to now what people that they earning not just miles but points. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually I don't know why my thing's not. You talk about those points. I'm going to pop out of the room and I'll come right back. But you're on.
All right. Well, I mean, whenever people come to me and they ask me like, which credit cards should I get? I'm like, listen, it's a very personal decision. What you need to do is make sure that, first of all, that you can pay it off in full every month, because if you cannot pay off your credit card in full every month, do not get one of these airline or travel rewards cards, or period, because you know what? You'll find yourself in debt real fast. That happened to me 20, 30 years ago, where I was just trying to charge everything. People would give me their cash, my friends. And next thing you know, I'm in the hole like 25 grand. And to get out of that took me years, because, you know, every month I'd be hit with like a $300 interest. And I'm like, what? And so it's basically just giving someone $300 a month or whatever the APR is. So do not get a travel credit card if you cannot pay it off full every month. But if you can, then this is a great way to offset your travel. And there are different cards. You know, it really all depends on where you live, how much you spend, what airlines you fly, where you like to stay, and you know, how much you eat out, things like that. So it's a great game. It's evolved over the years. Before, the airlines would give you 1 mile per mile flown. So, you know, everyone would look for a $200 ticket to Singapore and get, you know, close to 20,000 miles. And if you had elite status, you could get, you know, 50,000 miles, even more. But now most airlines are giving you $1 per dollar spent, not including taxes. So, you know, if I bought a $200 ticket to Singapore or whatever, I would only get, I'd get 5 times that. So I'd get 1,000 miles from that, only 1,000 miles instead of 50,000. So, it all depends on how much you fly. If you have elite status like I do, I would get 11 times that point, but most the general members get 5 times the dollar spent. But it's not a racket like it used to be. So now these days people are actually earning more miles by getting certain credit cards. But again, do not get one unless you can pay it off every month. Otherwise, it's not worth it.
Yeah, you're going to go.
But if you do get one, go through johnnyjet.com, because that's how one of my revenue streams.
Okay, so they can actually go and apply there, and then you get a bit of a commission from that.
Well, they don't apply from my website, but if they go in, hit the credit card section, and they choose whatever credit card they're going to do, or read the stories and click the link, it takes them right to that website, whatever bank it is, and then those banks know that I sent them, and then they'll send a referral. That's
nice, awesome. The Georgette is one of the guests, and she just asked about Alaskan Airline credit card. What do you think about that?
That's my sister. That's got to be my sister, because there's not a lot of Georgettes out there.
That's for your sister.
Hello, Georgette.
Hey, Georgette. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and she's a travel writer actually, and she's been to at least 50, probably 50 destinations on behalf of JohnnyJet.com, which is great. I mean, she's been to Fiji, Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe, Argentina, all around the Caribbean. So she's traveled a lot. And she does use the Alaska Airlines. And I used to have a column in Alaska Airlines magazine until, actually it would have gone away anyway, because all the airlines have gotten rid of their magazines, but it ended just before then anyway. But the Alaska Airlines is great. I mean, especially if you're flying Alaska, they give you a free companion ticket. And I think it's like $99. So I have to brush up on it, but I know it's a great deal. And now American in Alaska are partnering. They're going to be joining the One World in March. I think it's March 21st. Alaska will be part of One World. So that actually will even expand it.
Yeah. And I know Aeroplan, which is the Air Canada kind of spinoff, it recently became a Chase partner. So
last week.
Yeah, exactly. And so now, because you were hot in that clip talking about that credit card as well, is that but the question I have now with all these miles, and you haven't traveled since February, and the last flight I had was in January. Well, maybe it was early February, returning back from the East Coast, and I haven't been on a plane. I've got, I'm also before Chase, Sapphire Reserve. I was membership rewards, and I have hundreds of thousands of membership rewards. Now, at least with some of these, you can use these rewards, unlike the airline miles, that you have to use them on there to purchase tickets or upgrades.
Well, you don't. Even airline miles, they'll always try and get you to buy stuff in their store or whatever, but don't ever do that, because that's just a waste of money. The way you what's the word I'm looking for? The way you get the most value out of your miles and points is by buying expensive tickets. Like I was mentioning before with my mom, you buy a business class ticket that would normally be $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for a certain amount of points, instead of, you don't ever want to use your miles and points to buy a ticket from here to New York for $200. You want to do it if it's a emergency and a last minute ticket, where sometimes they can cost, $700, or if you got to go overseas, that's when you want to do it.
High value for sure.
High value. I mean, you definitely want to get the most out of it.
I spent a good part of the summer and early fall in Eastern Europe last year, and as I'm nobody's giving points on miles traveled on a motorcycle, and I really need, maybe you could, can I go to JohnnyJet.com? There's got to be a card that does that. But I
have a whole team now that writes about credit cards. I mean, I have experts for each card, because it's just too much. It's just too much for me to comprehend, and so that's why we have so much content on credit cards, because we have specialists on each one. And you know what? If we don't have one for motorcycles, we should. I mean, at least try to get the most out of it. Exactly. So do you ship your you don't ship your motorcycle, do you? You must rent them.
No, it's sitting in a garage locked down right now in Athens. I started in Athens. I did a big loop. I went to Bulgaria, to Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, crossed the Black Sea to Georgia, then to Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, back to Bulgaria, and back to Greece. And
when you go across these land borders, are they just like looking at you like, what's going on? You've got to be James Bond.
what is this guy doing? It is always a funny look, because they look at and I have a vanity plate, right? So on the license plate says WRLD. It's World Rider without the vowels. So that's kind of my little branding thing. And nobody understands this because no license plates in Europe or Eastern Europe or Africa, anywhere, are only letters. There's always numbers. And they always say, where's the numbers? You have to have some numbers. At one border one time, they just refused to get me going. There's no numbers. And then the little sticker we get that gives you the month in California. And if those little stickers have a series of like 8-digit numbers on there, and I call him over, I'm like, look, there's my number, right? And he's like, oh, very good. Okay, that's good. I'll go ahead.
So you can bring your motorcycle over, no problem. You don't need to register it or anything.
No, I mean, in some places in Europe, as part of the EU, the borders are easy to cross. Now, I obviously was in Ukraine and these other places, so there's some more paperwork. You have to temporarily import it. They want to make sure you leave it. So sometimes they might ask you for a deposit because they think you're going to go in there and sell it, and they're going to lose their duty, their taxes. So, but you can get a thing called a carnet de passage, which you do for a lot of different things. Even when you're filming international shows, you get a carnet for all your gear that you have as well, because they don't want you to go in there and be selling expensive gear there. Or people kind of what you call smuggling, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's ways around that. But what I was going to say when I came back after a pretty rigorous journey around the Black Sea, pretty much circumnavigating the entire sea there, I never book anything in advance, hotels when I'm traveling. But as I was getting close to trying to figure out my schedule, I decided, I look for the value. I'm going to use my points, and I want to get a business class ticket back to the States. Because if there's one thing after bouncing around on a motorcycle for a while, you want to have this this experience. And I ended up to couple things. This is kind of fun. So this would be maybe a Johnny Jet strategy that I use. So I realized there was a business class ticket for minimal miles. I want to say it was 50,000. It was a very low number, 50 or 60,000 on Austrian Airlines. But the catch was you had to fly Aegean, which is a partner with Austrian Airlines, which is the Greek airline. Through
Athens,
Frankfurt.
On Aegean?
I went. No, is it Frankfurt? Yeah. So Athens to Frankfurt.
Okay.
And then Frankfurt to Vienna.
Gotcha.
And so anyway, a quick little hop, but the next flight, the real one, the big jumbo jet coming back to the States, left 18 hours later. So I'm thinking, okay, what could I do for 18 hours in Vienna? I'd never been to Vienna or Austria. So this was also another way to come and see a new country and there. And then I start, I actually talked to a good friend of mine. He says, if you're going to be in Vienna, you need to go to the Opera House, the State Opera. It's an incredible building built at the beginning of the 20th century, like 1903 or 6 or something like that. Spectacular architecture, and they do, real opera in there. And so I'm looking at the schedule and found that there was an opera that night. I would be landing at about 4:00. I figured the opera starts at 8. I can get out of the airport to the opera, found a hotel a couple blocks from the opera, the theater, and then the next morning took an Uber to the airport and got on the jumbo jet and flew business class. So it was kind of
you gotta love that.
Yeah, for sure.
And did you buy the opera with your credit card, or did you use points?
I actually had, it's funny because originally they said it was sold out, so I was on like a waiting list. And before I left Athens, I got the email saying it was there, and it was not a cheap ticket. I did have to pay for it online. I want to say it was $225 or something to see the.
Yeah, but you know what an experience! And Vienna's an amazing city, and so much, musical history. They sell those little Mozart bars. I love going there.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I only had 18 hours, so it wasn't even one of those things.
18 hours is better than 0 hours. And I tell people that all the time. They're like, I only have a week off. I don't want to go to Australia for a week. I'm like, listen, a week in Australia or even 5 days is better than 0 days. So experience it while you can. Obviously you want to stay longer, and people feel that way. Like when they go far away, that they need to go for weeks at a time. That's not the case, especially if you can use your miles and points and fly business class. I mean, what a difference it makes. You actually look forward to the flight.
That long. Exactly. And that gets you into the lounge. So, you want to get to the airport a little early, and these kinds of things add to that experience. Hey, I forgot I had a bottle of wine here. I wanted to toast to Johnny Jet in the holidays. So I'm it's early in California. I don't really like to start, but Mondays it's kind of been a tradition. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know about you, but I've got a Lone Madrone. It's a Grenache Blanc from Paso Robles. So it's a Rhone style
here in California.
So cheers, Johnny.
Cheers.
You got a Red Bull. What is that?
I got a Colombian coffee cold brew.
Okay, cold brew.
That actually JetBlue sent to me because they're now serving this in their mint class. And this is the first time I tried it. I've had it in the fridge for a week or two.
Oh.
And I was like, you know what? I got to bring something downstairs to do my interview. And I don't drink alcohol. I've never been drunk in my life.
Oh, really? Okay, so there's another a thing I learned about Johnny Jet. So, well, cheers. Rudy Maxa is another travel host, and he and I both are we kind of are wine collectors, if you will. But
oh yeah, you go to dinner with Rudy. He's looking at the wine list for an hour.
Yeah, that's me too. That is it's crazy, especially if you go to one.
When I travel and, sometimes you go on these trips and they're trying to wine and dine you, I feel terrible because I do not know the difference between a good wine or a cheap wine. And actually when I always do taste it and things like that. And my favorite is Canadian ice wine because it's so sweet.
Oh, it's so sweet. Yeah. It's great. Georgette's saying, hey man, be careful with the coffee. She's saying, be careful with the coffee.
Well, I just ate some tamales because Christmas tamales. And I'm like, I'm not sure this is going to mix. So
it's not a good pairing.
I'll catch you next time.
Hey, coming back to the points, in this time, we've all got these accumulated points, and yet we're not really traveling. And yes, we can use these points for other kinds of things that are not, as you say, get you the most value. Even like a rental car, and occasionally maybe a hotel room. But even that, these are two things we're not doing. But many credit cards now are making it real popular to give you cash back. That's a big deal now. The Apple card, which I now use on my Apple Watch, so it's contactless. I don't have to touch the credit card or the scanner. Nice. And what they do is they give you 2% cash back, but it comes immediately into your digital wallet. So you don't even have to wait. Most credit cards, you got to wait till you pay the bill, and if you're late, they pull it from you. But Apple, you've got that cash right away, and you can literally use that on any online store. It has a credit card number and everything. What do you think is our points until the world comes back to normal and travel? Is this a better way to go?
I mean, for sure, for some people, I know, cash is more important than travel perks, and people are not traveling right now. So, but I do think travel is going to turn around in the next, 6 months or so. I think, everything I hear, they're saying by September, we're hoping that everything will be, almost back to normal. But even by June, that we should be able to start traveling, internationally. And you can watch these airline schedules too, because it's interesting to see what they do when they start planning stuff. Although sometimes I think they do try and play tricks where they're, they say they're going to fly somewhere when they really know they're not, just so people will buy the tickets, and they another way they can grab the money. Credit. But always, if an airline cancels your flight, they have to give you your money back. So make sure. So that is, by the way, another tip and trick, which people learned the hard way this spring when, all the airlines started, canceling their flights, and they didn't want to give them money back. There were a couple of airlines that were terrible at it, even though the DOT says they have to. So just keep fighting them on it. And that's another good reason why to have one of these credit cards. You don't ever pay with your your ATM card. You always pay with a credit card because you can at least fight for it. And and if you have a good credit card company, they'll usually go to bat for you.
They'll fight for it too. Yeah, for sure. Sorry.
And also don't buy your tickets so far in advance. These days you want to buy, 60 days or less.
So sorry, one of our guests here says travel will be back. There is light. Yay, Johnny Travel will be back.
Definitely.
And so I'm at, what is it going to take to get you back on a plane?
Well, I think it's for the coronavirus cases have to go down significantly. I was going to go see my dad in August, and I didn't because there were like 5,000 cases. And I'm like, you know what? I got to wait till they go down more. And now it's, completely out of control. I'm almost kicking myself for not going then, but it's the only way I'm going to travel again is if the airlines do rapid testing on every flight beforehand, not this 72 hours in advance, like a lot of different places are, where you can do it at home, where first of all, you can't trust it. Some of them are sending in bogus results, or, they could go get tested and then the next day go out to a party and then 2 days later get on a plane. So it can't. I don't trust people. I mean, just look what happened this past week, or now last week, from that flight from Orlando to LA, where a couple went on the plane. The man was obviously wasn't able to breathe. People were looking at him funny, and it turned out he had COVID. He knew he had COVID. He got on the plane and died on the plane, and it's all over the news right now. And actually, the EMT did mouth to mouth. Imagine that.
Oh my God. So now the EMT likely has that for sure.
So yeah, the EMT says he's feeling terrible right now. I just saw it on the news again. And then there was a Hawaiian couple that were in Seattle 3 weeks ago that took the test, flew to San Francisco, got the test results back in the airport where it says you're positive, but they still got on the plane to Kauai. And so everyone on the plane has now been in contact. So, Kauai has changed the rules because now they're saying that, you have to do that 14-day quarantine. This 72-hour test beforehand is not going to cut it. Even though Hawaii, I was listening to one of their doctors, actually the lieutenant governor of Hawaii is also a doctor. And he says this testing is working, which I'm really happy to hear. I was surprised. He's saying that actually once we started doing this testing, that the numbers have actually gone down in Hawaii. Because I thought for sure that once on October 15th, when Hawaii announced that they were going to allow people to skip the quarantine as long as they did this COVID test in advance, that if they were just going to have run it rampant, but that's not the case. So I'm glad I'm wrong. But yeah, I do think the future of getting me on a plane is where, everyone's doing a lot of rapid, accurate tests, or the COVID cases go down, or, I get vaccinated.
Yeah. Yeah. Vaccination is key, I think, in my mind. I don't know.
That's hopefully only a few months away.
Right. Yeah. So considering you've traveled 100,000 miles for the last, 25 years.
That's on the low end, by the way. It's more than.
Yeah. If you looked at the real numbers, you could be pushing 200 in many of those years, I'm sure. Right.
But, especially this whole COVID thing, you now realize that, first of all, flying that much is not good for yourself, but it's definitely not good for the environment. So I'm cutting back a lot just on that. And one of the silver linings of the virus is that, everyone's getting comfortable doing these kind of interviews or meetings. I had friends that would fly New York to Sydney via California and not even spend the night in Sydney, turn right back to New York because they had to do a face-to-face meeting. They would spend 7 hours on the ground. And I'd say, why would you do that? And they work for a big company. They're flying them first class. They're like, because if we don't do it and shake their hand, our competitor will and get this multi-million-dollar contract. But just think about the impact on the environment. And there's so many business travelers that travel like that. And again, I mentioned earlier that I went to Hawaii for dinner once.
Yeah.
And I'd go to New York for meetings all the time. And I would spend a night or not even. And it was no big deal. But it's changing these days. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing.
I know people who just needed like another 15,000 miles or 5,000 miles to get to their elite status again before the clock year. And they would hop on a plane and just to do a loop.
Mileage run.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, mileage runs were always very popular. Everyone around this time were flying mileage runs, and I was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but these days you can actually, the airline will try and, say, instead of doing a mileage run, you can pay a certain amount of money, which is usually ridiculous amount, like $2,000 or something, and you can retain your status, because having the status is everything for frequent flyers like myself, because I usually get upgraded for free. So I could fly to New York in a lie flat seat and spend $300 for the ticket when someone else is paying $2,300 for that one-way ticket.
Right. Yeah.
So it makes a big difference. And also you get free check bags. I'd get 3 check bags, even though I don't check bags. But if I was traveling with my kids, I do. And it makes a difference and my wife always is overweight, not her, but her bags. If the bag's over 50 pounds, they would charge you $100, but I'm allowed up to 70 pounds. And so sometimes we check in at the regular counter because the line for the elite status was longer. And also the bag would show up 60 pounds. We're like, okay, you owe $100. And I would say, well, I'm executive platinum or whatever. And say, oh, sorry, I didn't see that. And then they waive it. So it makes a big difference.
So, the unintended consequences of this, beyond what, of these face-to-face meetings. Also, you talk about the environment. Certainly, doing these mileage runs was not a good environmental thing. But by the fact that we are sitting at the last stats I saw in terms of this past week was compared to the week beginning, I think the 14th of December, we are at almost 47% of the amount last December of amount of airlines. And here's a great graphic. I'm going to pull it up real quick because I think this is kind of cool to take a peek at. And we'll kind of go down. So you can see this is 1 week of air. So this is a graphic representation, of 1 week of air travel, the number of flights in the air. At the top is 2019. And 2020 below. This is basically in March when things were first shutting down. I couldn't find a more recent graphic like this, but there's a lot of people. Yeah.
Except China. China's almost back to normal, if they're not back to normal in domestic flying. Yeah.
While we've got the slides up here, speaking of travel and traveling in the lie down seats, tell us about this. This looks like you've got some
woman I was sitting next to on a Korean Air flight. I'm kidding. That's my wife. This is our honeymoon, and we were flying Toronto to Seoul.
Okay.
And, I mean, it's amazing to be able to fly 13 hours in a lie flat seat, and there was no one else in the cabin on this particular flight except
I know I'm looking over there, right? There's like an open seat.
There was no one on except the relief pilot would come in once in a while and take a nap. We had the whole cabin to ourselves. And but even when you're flying Asian airlines like Korean, every time someone uses the bathroom, the flight attendant goes in there and cleans it for the next person.
Oh wow.
And that's typical for a lot of these luxury airlines.
Pre-COVID. Yeah.
It's pre-COVID. Oh yeah, this is definitely pre-COVID. This is 2012.
Yeah. So this is the family.
Yep, that's my wife and my son and my daughter who was born 16 months ago.
Oh wow. And what's her name?
Olivia. And this is in Laguna Beach. We're at the Ritz-Carlton.
Yep, looks like my old stomping grounds down there.
This was one of the dumbest things I've ever done.
This is I bring up this photo because now I can say Johnny Jet likes cats, because I've got a cup. But is that a cheetah?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I was just hiking one day in Africa and I came across a cheetah and I had some cat food in my back pocket and I was like, come here, little kitty. I'm kidding. This is in South Africa and I was at a cheetah reserve and the owner said, do you want to pet a cat? And I don't know what I was thinking, but I said, sure, like a fool. Right here, I was like, I hope I have travel insurance. But fortunately, I didn't make any set of moves and it all went well, but I don't think I'll do that again.
That jet assist, right?
I met jet assist. And also full disclosure, I was a brand ambassador for Allianz Travel Insurance for at least 5 years until COVID hit.
Wow. Well, I'm a MedJet assist, and I actually used the service because I broke my leg in Bolivia in the middle of nowhere, and
you had to get airlifted out.
Yep.
Wow.
But it wasn't an airlift like
$100,000.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it was not a private plane because I wasn't critical in that sense. What they did do is I had to fly. This is interesting. Speaking of multiple flights, so it was in the middle of nowhere, and I had to get a ride in a back of a Suburban, in like a 1974 Suburban. This was about 12 years ago, and to Potosi, Bolivia. It's the highest city in the world. Sits at about 14,000, 15,000 feet. And at one point, the richest city in the world during the colonial times because of the silver that was mined out of the mountain there. But if you've never been there, it's an incredible place, but it's pretty poverty stricken now. But I had to get an airplane. They had built a new airport. It was only a year old at the time, but it had never opened. No flights ever gone in and out of there. It was spanking new, runways spanking new, but people were too poor to fly. And it's also dangerous because of the thin air, as you can imagine, up at that elevation. So the MedJet Assist people had recruited a Cessna pilot and his little plane, and he flew in and he made 2 loops and said, I can't, it was all fogged in, all the clouds he couldn't see. Then he said, I'm going to do one more loop. And he managed to come in, flew me to Santa Cruz de la Sierra, where I got on another flight to Sao Paulo. And the flight what the airline, what MedJet did is they bought 3 seats so I could have my legs straight because there was no first class in this particular aircraft. And then when I got to Sao Paulo, they put me in first or business class so I could stretch that leg out. And that's kind of how that works.
I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I've heard that multiple times from other people. I mean, it's worth the $400 or whatever you spend a year on it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to places like where I go, where you go, domestically, I'm not so worried, obviously, but you don't want to be caught somewhere and, have to get hurt or just come down with like a virus like this, right?
Sure. Well, you have to. I do think MedJet now covers COVID.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, they just started doing that, I believe. But you have to be 100 miles away from home for it to kick in. This is another one of the times I was like, what?
Yeah, I'm wondering, you like cats and you like spiders, tarantulas.
This is when we were filming the Travel Channel show and we were in Belize for the Mayas because it was supposed to be the end of the world.
I see the pyramid back there. Yeah.
And I mean, what an incredible experience. And these pyramids, there's no one around. Literally, the only time there were people around when the cruise ships would come in. And that was like once or twice a week. Otherwise, you literally had this place to yourself, which we did. And our guide was like, let me find a tarantula. And he started digging under rocks. I'm like, he must be joking, right? Sure enough, he grabs one and he's like, here, hold out your hand. I'm like, and I did it. I mean, I'm like, right here, I'm like, what am I thinking? I was like, please don't bite me. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm going to need to get MedJet. And anyway, it made for good footage, even though the Travel Channel cut out this footage.
Oh no.
I did not take
a different one. Nope. That's funny. It got kind of merged in, but yeah. So let's take this and we're going to end that. There we go. So, look, we're already at the top of the hour. And wow, as I told you before, the time flies in these. You're a travel guy, and I was coming around to this, that you we all have found new things. Yeah, I kind of like one of the things I repeat, one of my mantras on this webcast is don't look and, think about what you're missing, going out to a restaurant, getting on an airplane, or what you've lost, the ability to be a little more free. Think about what you're gaining and what you're learning. And, for me, doing these webcasts have given me a bit of a purpose. You're doing something similar, and you know so many people. You've been doing this, the travel guru, for 25 years. You've started connecting with people that maybe you wouldn't have in a year, like many people over since COVID, and doing this thing called 39 questions on your YouTube channel. So I was wondering if I could play a little a bit of that and talk about it at the other end, and tell us how you're getting these people.
Sure. I've been trying to get you and your brother to do it at the same time.
Yes. We're gonna be able to do that now that the the White House thing is there. Okay, so here's a little medley of Johnny Jet's 39 questions, travel questions, and I'm gonna turn my mic off.
What do you always seem to forget when you travel?
Charges. Issues.
Oh, for sure. How about yourself? Have you been on a plane lately?
I have not. No, I haven't been on a plane since it started.
Yeah.
I mean, I find this whole thing the hardest part of it all. I mean, I was sick. I had the virus. I very mildly, and I tested positive, and then I tested positive for antibodies. So I'm on sort of what feels like the other side of it. But the hardest part I find of the whole thing is the sense of feeling the lack of freedom. Like when I was positive for the virus, they used to come by my house every day to check and make sure I was still quarantining. Wow. So I felt like a prison. So the lack of freedom has been the biggest issue. And I never knew. I always knew that like my idea of hell would be, the ninth circle of hell would be to be in prison. So I try and always pay my taxes. But we were chatting about like, where do you want to go first? I think the moment when we're allowed to go somewhere is a huge travel opportunity. Right. But culturally and personally and financially, which you know probably.
How about, do you use a certain credit card when you travel?
I have a Chase United one.
Okay.
But just for points. I mean, if I do have any kind of upgrades or something, it's sometimes with United. But.
Favorite travel movie?
Oh, My Life in Ruins.
What's the craziest thing you've ever eaten?
A balut in the Philippines.
You did?
So, yeah, I did it. I did it for the camera, only because the camera was rolling.
Oh, and will you ever do it again?
No.
Drink of choice in the air and on the ground.
Drink of choice on the ground, like if I could go anywhere, would be an amazing tiki bar. I am a tiki drink aficionado, but a great Mai Tai on if I could have a drink magically appear in my hand. Yeah. In the air, wine. I drink more wine when I'm flying than I do when I'm home.
I only drink water when I'm flying. Favorite travel show besides your own?
I thought what Bourdain was doing was really amazing there at the end. I thought Parts Unknown was really cool. I mean, one of the things that he managed to do that very few people pull off is he was making a show for himself. I mean, he and his team were not worried about, how action-packed is it, how fast-paced is it. It was really a show that was about what he wanted it to be about. And I thought it was beautifully shot. Certainly that show is one I looked on to with a lot of envy. But he had an enormous amount of independence. So I thought that was a pretty amazing show.
And what's the craziest thing you've ever eaten?
Oh, gosh. Well, I was in Jordan once in the desert with those guys who live in the desert, and they roasted a lamb. And I don't know if they tell this to foreigners just to freak us out because they know it does. They take the eyeball out of the lamb and hand it to you because you're the honorary guest and you have to eat it.
Oh, no.
Which I did. And it tastes it's a little squishy and slippery, just like you'd imagine an eyeball to be. And again, I don't know if that's really
drink of choice in the air and on the ground.
In the air, I might have a glass of wine if it's a dinner and it's a decent wine, and you're in front of you're actually getting a $30 bottle of wine instead of a $15 bottle of wine. I'm not a big cocktail guy. They all have designer cocktails and spirits, handcrafted and so on with shaped ice like they do in Japan. Now they're doing it in America. And, I'll try those because it's interesting now and then. But generally, I collect wine, particularly Burgundy wine. So I guess red Burgundy and white Burgundy would be my choice.
Okay. How about your favorite travel movie?
Well, Up in the Air is always fun for those of us who care about frequent flyer miles, as you and I do, and some of the reprobates we hang around with.
How about a favorite travel book?
I like Simon Winchester's writing. I like Paul Theroux's writing. Those are modern-day travel writers, authors I respect, and I wish I could write as well as they do.
How about a favorite restaurant?
Oh my gosh. That can't be a question.
What's your earliest travel memory?
Oh, my earliest travel memory was loading up into our Pontiac station wagon with the dog, my two other sisters, and my parents, and doing road trips to Pennsylvania. And we would leave at 4 a.m. with a cooler of bologna sandwiches and just
So 39 questions. That's just a smattering. Several, Ashley's been on my show. Rudy's been on my show. I was on the show with Andrew on Rudy's show together. He and I appeared together. So how did this come about, and how many have you done? And will this keep going post-COVID?
Well, this is actually one of the silver linings for me with COVID, is because I've always wanted to do a podcast. I never found the time because I was always traveling. And so I actually started this in March or April. And I think I've done over 30, definitely over 30, but I haven't done one in a couple months. I've been slacking a little bit, although I'm going to get you to probably be my next guest. But listen, I hope to keep going for till the end of time, because it's fun. It's a great way to learn about different travelers and their habits. I think a lot of their information will help people when they plan their travel, which is important. That's why a lot of the questions I ask, which at the end I always ask, what's your best travel tip, which I think is the most interesting thing for me. And these guys have traveled all over the world. Josh was my first interview, as you can tell, because I'm looking at the monitor instead of the camera. And I should have, probably done a practice one on, my wife or something, so I'd learn. But then, even like 2 months ago, I was watching, I think, like Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel, and the person they're interviewing, they're looking at the monitor and they're like, "Look at me." They're like, "Really?"
Yeah,
so,
it's so funny. I've had guests do that on here as well. It's
awkward, but it's awkward to watch it, for me at least.
Yeah.
So, but I hope it keeps going. I mean, there's so many travelers out there, and not even just famous ones, just ones that are seasoned travelers, because that's where you learn the tips and tricks from.
Yeah, no, there's no question. And people can watch these, by the way. I scraped them off of YouTube. And your YouTube channel is
Johnny Jet, just
Johnny Jet.
JOHNNYJET. I'm not related to Jones, so just one T. And
I was talking to some people the other day. I says, I've got Johnny Jet coming on. They're like, Joan Jett? I says, no, Johnny Jet.
Listen, I got everything. One of my friends called me up there, said, I hear you're going to be on Good Morning America tomorrow. I'm like, I don't think so. And so then I looked online, and it was Johnny Depp. Their mother told them that they heard that Johnny Jet was going to be on, but it's Johnny Depp. And so, I've been called.
Hey, Sari's got a question here now. I just flipped back because we were on there. How does an airline permit someone to get on a flight? What's that process looking at? Are any airlines doing more or less than others?
How do they permit them to get on the flight?
Yeah, I guess. I guess she's probably referring back when we were talking about that COVID passenger. But
so these days, and including that passenger, when you check in for flight, they ask you, do you have any symptoms of COVID? And you have to answer yes or no. And obviously, everyone lies, because it's this. This is why I haven't flown, because they do not trust the person next to me. First of all, knows that they have COVID, or that they even know it and they're still flying because they're selfish. And that's the problem. So, every airline in the US asks you if you have any symptoms, and you're not supposed to fly, but a lot of them are flying. And that's why I haven't, personally, even though I do believe, that the plane air is as safe as in the hospital, because they have these huge HEPA filters, and the air comes from up top and goes down and then goes out. And they recircle it every 3 to 4 minutes. But if you're sitting next to someone or within 2 rows and they have COVID, the chances of you getting it are pretty good, unless you have a N95 mask on and you know how to wear it properly, which is not the easiest thing to wear. You have to, it takes time to even learn how to do it.
Yeah, there's no question that was anyway, I've heard that. We've heard now, latest news, if you've been following, that there's a new COVID-19 strain that they've uncovered in the UK that they say is 70% more infectious. So what are the airlines? I mean, there's a few flights anyway going across the ponds here. I mean, but there are flights and people are traveling. What are they? What's going to happen now? Somebody's in UK and lands in JFK or Dulles.
This is the whole thing with COVID in the beginning. I remember when COVID was hitting in February and March, and we lived near LAX, and you'd see the planes coming in from Asia, and my wife and I would joke, there goes some more COVID passengers. It's it's scary. And, the governor of New York today said that he wants these flights stopped. There's 6 flights a day going from the UK to New York, JFK alone. And he's like, these things are, these should not be going on. Canada stopped the flights from the UK. Italy stopped, Belgium, the Netherlands, Argentina, Chile. So, I mean, I can't even keep up. I haven't even looked at the news in the last couple hours, but as far as I know, the U.S. has not stopped them yet. I predict they will, but it might be too late. It was almost like the whole thing with the China flights when they said they stopped them in February. They only stopped, the flights kept going. They're only stopping Chinese citizens. Foreign nationals could still come in.
Yeah, it is so bizarre. I mean, one of our attendees here says we need to shut down our airports like many other countries have already have. That's obviously it's very controversial. These things are drastic, and with our right now our divisive culture in this country where we've made masks a line in the sand for some people.
I mean, that's the worst thing about Trump is that he made it political. There's no reason why masks should be political. Everyone should have been wearing them. It's too late now. I mean, the damage has been done. I mean, we're just thankful that there's vaccines now, and so hopefully people won't have to wear masks come the fall. But look at New Zealand. The only way you can really stop this virus is if you're, first of all, they're a small country, but they stopped everything. No matter who goes into New Zealand, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. It's not by choice. It's not an honor system. They escort you to a hotel and you're in that hotel and you can't leave. Same thing with Australia. And that's why they've been so successful. Although I was just reading this, actually yesterday, I read that Australia, there was a loophole for flight crews, international flight crews, but now they've just tightened up today because cases have spiked. All it takes is one person to ruin the whole party.
Yeah.
But,
and go ahead.
No, I just interviewed 2 people, 2 different friends who live in New Zealand who are Americans, and I haven't uploaded it yet to my YouTube channel, but they were telling me, people do not wear masks there now because there's no COVID in New Zealand. It's just like life is as normal. I mean, one of my friends said she just got back from the movies with her friends. She went to the movies and dinner, and and it's just, this is the way it could have been, but it would have taken some drastic moves, and I just don't think Americans are willing to do that. I mean, look at today. The last 3 days, over 1 million people have crossed TSA checkpoints in the airports in America. 1 million people. I mean, in the old days, it would be 2.5 million. Old days, I mean 2019.
Yeah.
But they're all begging you not to travel right now because, especially here in California, the hospitals are over capacity. There's not enough beds. There's not enough doctors and nurses. So we're staying home, and that's why I haven't flown. I'm a team player, and I believe me, it's difficult for me to tell people to stay home because my whole life I've been saying, listen, the more you travel, especially internationally, the less prejudices there will be in the world. I know it's corny as can be, but it's true.
No, it is.
Have prejudices, and then once I traveled the world, they all went away, and that's what I think people need to do. But right now, they just need to sit tight. Wait till everyone gets vaccinated and then hit the road. And it's going to be like the roaring 20s. History repeats itself.
Yeah, that will be amazing. And also in Australia, one thing, as you know, and in Canada, they've actually implemented where if you're in a particular province or state, you can't go to the next state without a permission slip of some sort, of being either an essential worker.
Today they shut down, or yesterday they shut down the borders. The land borders.
Yeah. And I had a guest on here from Nova Scotia, and that the maritime provinces are sealed off. People can't come in there or leave there to go to other places. So it's a when you do
the sacrifices of staying home right now, it shouldn't be that difficult. I mean, unless you have to travel, there's no reason to travel right now. It's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So
I I do a podcast. It's not as regular. It's not as over. I've done a podcast since 2006. So I was really early on in doing podcasts, but like everything, you're doing 20 different things, and it's a one-man band show here. But it's audio only. It's on the iTunes store. It's the World Writer Podcast. And
So
one of the things that
do you take this interview and just
yes, I do. I have been doing that. I'm a bit behind on doing that because you got to scrape out.
That's a way to do it.
Yeah, I got to scrape out the points where we're talking about a picture that we've seen. So I don't just drop the needle, so do a needle drop. But yes, absolutely. But one of the things I do when I'm doing more of the traditional audio podcast is I had this thing called the Curious 7, and when I was pulling together some content on your 39 questions and watching some of these interviews, I thought, wow, why don't I do the Curious 7 on the webcast? And so Johnny Jet inspired me here. And before we wind this down, but last thing I'd like to do, and these are spontaneous, don't think about them too hard. Just tell me there. Okay, and the first 6 questions are standard for every guest. And then the 7th one is always something custom I just come up with for the related to that guest. So the first one, and it's funny because a couple of these, or at least a couple of these are, you asked the same question. So the first one, what's your favorite travel movie?
Favorite travel movie?
Yeah.
Crocodile Dundee, probably. Okay. That's what really got me started.
A book that you would recommend to any traveler, and it doesn't have to be a travel book.
A Sunburned Country is hilarious.
That's Bryson, right?
Yep. Bill Bryson.
It's a great book. Longest ever flight.
I was on the world's longest commercial flight, and I was in the very first one, the inaugural. I did Singapore to New York, and actually I have the certificate right up on that wall right there. So I was on the very first flight. So that was 18 and a half hours.
18 hours. Okay. The city where you found the best street food?
Thailand, Bangkok.
Mm-hmm. If you had to live in any other country than the U.S.,
I love Singapore too. I mean, Singapore, because Singapore, first of all, is the cleanest and the safest street food. But Bangkok is probably the tastiest.
Yeah, and colorful. Huh.
Yeah.
If you had to live in any other country than the USA, where would you live?
Sydney, Australia.
Okay. The country or place you have no interest in returning to, and why? It's a country or place. Yeah.
Country or place? I mean, it's a difficult question. I do ask this question to people. I will go back to almost everywhere, but I don't really care for Tijuana.
Okay, interesting. We're going to come back and talk about that sometime.
Well,
not on the.
We're going to do it sometime because I know I have to jump in about a minute.
Yeah. Okay. So then the last one is, since you're Johnny Jet, favorite experience, favorite equipment.
Favorite equipment?
Yeah, meaning
plane?
Aircraft. Yeah.
A350. Airbus A350.
And why?
I just love it. It's similar to the 787, but Boeing just really took a huge hit this year. With or last couple of years with this whole 737 MAX, everyone always wanted to be on a Boeing. Now what they've been doing with the FAA is just sketchy. I don't trust them as much as I did. And also the A350 is just a beautiful plane. It has, the windows are amazing, the air circulation. And the one I was on, the last one, was Qatar Airways, and man, what an incredible outfit they have.
Yeah. I flew Qatar once, and I don't remember the equipment, but yeah, amen to that. Okay, well, I know you got to go. I want to thank you, and I want to thank all the people that have tuned in live. And if you're tuning us in on the YouTube replay, thank you as well. I appreciate all of you. We are getting through these times. Johnny Jet, your last word, any words of wisdom for the guests, for the
attendees?
My
best travel tip is always be genuinely nice to everybody. Flight attendants, gate agents, the call center, because you know what? If you're a jerk, they're not going to help you. If you're nice, they'll do everything they can. So always be nice. That's why I usually, I used to bring 3 boxes of chocolates when I travel. One for the gate agents, one for the flight attendants, and one for myself.
That's awesome. There's a great tip for you. Once this travel comes up, we can appreciate these people. And yeah, I think being kind is overrated. Underrated, rather. Underrated.
Not overrated.
Yeah, what did I? Anyway, I'm going to run this 20-second video, and Thank you for tuning in to the Journeys Webcast. I'm Allan Karl, your host. Be sure to tune us in every Monday. The time changes depending on where we are in the world. This is Allan Karl, and where will your next journey take you? Johnny Jet. Thank you for your time.
My wife's
today.
going to kill me, but it was fun. So thanks for doing it.
Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. And we'll circle back.
I will email you about getting you on. I was hoping to do it now, but I just don't have time right now.
Yeah, well, we did take long, and I told you these things happen. It's weird. But anyway, be well, and give my best, and thank your wife and kids for letting me have you for that time.
Take care.
Ciao.